Okay, so as always, we started with a quick 400-meter low intensity jog. So here I'm just explaining to them that they can go at their own pace. They don't have to compete with each other. My oldest daughter in the middle, she is a soccer player, so she has a little bit more endurance than her brother and her sister. So I knew she was just going to take off and do what she needed to do, and that's exactly what happened. My son and my youngest daughter, they don't have as much long distance endurance as their sister. So just to start off with, you can see that they were competing with each other, but that quickly changed once they saw how far their older sister was getting. So it kind of went exactly how I expected it. She took off, and then her brother and her sister, they kind of slowed to their own pace, which is not unexpected. But really, the main goal here was just to get their body moving. Just that quick, low intensity jog to get their heart rate up a little bit, to get their body moving. And my youngest daughter, she has an innocent heart murmur, so I try to keep an eye on her as well when we're doing our jogs, any of our exercises. So she tends to let me know when she's had enough, and that's fine. So you could see here in a little bit, her brother got concerned, so he stopped and he went back for her, and they finished it out together. So here we're coming up at the end of that first lap. She got done. She tried to sit down, but as always, I had to remind her to stand up, keep her body long so that she can get that air in and out of her lungs, that she's not cramping up in any way. Keep her head up, her arms above her head if she needs to, so she can get those breaths in and out. Something that I'm constantly having a reminder of. Okay. And then my son and my youngest walking a little bit, so just a little reminder to finish strong, and here they come. So they did what they always do right there at the end. They powered through and they got it done. So here we're starting our warm up, the rest of our warm up after the jog. So trying to get them spaced out a little bit, making sure that they have room to do their exercises so they're not on top of each other. And we started off with walking arm circles. So my daughter in the middle is something that she's already incorporating into her soccer routine and workout. So I just had them do that up and down about 15 yards, about 4 times. This is just part of our general warm up. Okay, so the next exercise we did was a walking quad stretch. So I wanted to get those quads warmed up a little bit for our lower body exercises, because I was going to have them into a crouch when we're doing our exercises that'll be coming up later today. So I just wanted to make sure that they could get those legs warmed up nice and well. Okay. I also did this about 15 meters up and down about 4 times as well. Okay, here we're getting into our dynamic stretches. So we did 2 sets of each of these exercises. So we started with butt kicks. So I wanted to engage that bounce, that stretch shortening reflex that we're going to be working on with our lower body plyometrics. So we started with the butt kicks. We also did we did 15 yards the first set and then 10 yards the second set. Again, about 4 lengths each time. Okay, this next one we were doing a side shuffle. So again, we started with 15 yards in the first set, 10 yards for the second set. I wanted to make sure that they understood that they needed to get a little bit lower so that we can work those outside glutes. We get those nice and warmed up for our lower body agility exercises we had coming up. This next exercise we were doing was the walking lunges. So again, 15 yards the first set, 10 yards the second set. I wanted them to work on their balance with this as well. So keeping their hands on their hips, trying to stay upright, which is a little bit of a challenge for them. But of course, I wanted to make sure we kept it dynamic as well. So walking lunges is what we did here. Again, 2 sets, 15 yards the first set, 10 yards the second set. Here at the end of our specific warm up, I did also include just a short distance sprint. I wanted to make sure that they understood that we were going to be doing a lot of sprints throughout our workout today while we were outside. So I wanted to see what their best is, right when they're starting off, what was their all out sprint, what would it look like, so that I can compare it to when we were doing our drills later in the day. And I did notice a difference. So here they were a little bit more enthusiastic about getting the sprint, and as the day went on, they weren't sprinting like I needed them to. So again, something we'll just need to work on there. Okay, so this is our first segment, our first exercise, which is for our lower body plyometrics modality. We started off with bounding. So our variations for this, of course, was a single arm alternating leg bound. I wanted to work on that explosive power. My son plays football. My oldest daughter plays soccer, and our youngest daughter does cheerleading. So they all have areas where they are going to need that explosive power in their quads and their hamstrings. So I wanted to incorporate that. And again, this is something that I'm going to continue to work with them on during their off seasons over the winter break. So I did notice that they don't have as much vertical or horizontal explosive power. So here I was just explaining to them the technique, what it needs to look like, making sure that they understood they're pushing off that back leg and they are stretching their front leg out as far as they can, getting that explosive power so that they can increase distance out and also up. After we did the single arm alternating leg bound, we did the double arm alternating leg bound, and then we ended with the double leg bounding, which is a lot like a hop, but I wanted to make sure that they are focusing on that balance, that they are getting that explosive power. Okay, right here is where we're starting our double arm alternating leg bound. So one leg at a time, but I wanted to make sure that they were focusing on using both arms to propel themselves forward as the exercise suggests. So double arm alternating leg bounding. My son said it kind of looks like a Fortnite dance, so he was really excited to do this one. So is whatever they can do to understand the technique and what it entails. That's perfectly fine with me. So we did struggle a little bit on technique and making sure that we could get that explosive power. But again, something that we're going to work on through the off season. Okay, and here we're doing our double leg bounding, a lot like our hops, but again, I wanted to get that explosive power. I wanted to see how far and how high they could get with each one. So this was, I guess, a little bit easier for them as far as technique goes. They were able to understand the concept a little bit more. The only thing they really struggled with was, of course, just getting up. But, they had a little bit of an easier time with this as opposed to the single arm or the double arm bounding. Here's where it's got a little bit more entertaining. It was more their speed. We started doing our skips. So I had them start off with just the basic skips, which of course they are very familiar with. So they had no problem with these ones. But I wanted to make sure that they started off with this so that they can get the basic movement down, and then we would increase the difficulty a little bit, increase the intensity just slightly with our power skip and then our backward skip. Okay, so here I'm just explaining the next phase of our skip. I want to make sure that they are clear in understanding that the power skip is just a little bit more explosive power here. So again, like our bounding was at explosive power, explosive vertical power, but instead of a horizontal explosive power, it's more vertical. So taking that basic skip and just putting a little bit more power to drive our bodies upward. So not as much difficulty with the skips as they did with the bounding. So here we are starting our backward skip, which is a little bit of a precursor to some of our agility drills we had going, or are going to have going later in our exercises, or in our workout today. So again, not as much explosive power, but a lot more agility based, plyometric, the backward skip. We didn't have as much difficulty with this as we did again with the bounding, but just a little bit more balance and technique is what it required. So here we're starting our closed agility drills with the cones. So I had my son start with the square drill. So something that we've done before, practicing with just agility, because he's an offensive lineman for his football team. So he is pretty familiar with having to side shuffle so that he can defend on the offensive line, but he still struggles with it slightly. So I wanted to make sure that he is understanding what he can do so that to work on it. So square drill started at one end of the square. I had him sprint forward, side shuffle to the left or his right, and then he backpedaled, and then he side shuffled to his left. Okay. Which can again be done from the opposite end so that he can get that well-rounded effect. So after he was done, we moved on to his little sister, and then his twin sister rounded it out. Okay. So this is something that she does regularly with her soccer team, this agility drill, since she does all different kinds of positions at this point with her soccer team. She doesn't have just one position. She does goalie, she does midfield. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with all the positions in soccer, but she does a little bit of everything. So I wanted to make sure that she gets low, that she does that all out sprint, that side shuffle, getting a little bit lower, backpedaling. So she has to do that all day, every day. So this is something that we will continue to work on, something that she'll do in and out of soccer practice. The next I have set up here is the Z drill. So not as much sprinting with this one, but not a straight shuffle to the side either. It's more of a lateral shuffle that I wanted to make sure that they are incorporating here. So depending on what position you are in the field for their respective sports, they are going to be shuffling either in a straight line to the side or at an angle. So we're going to get low and we're going to shuffle whichever direction we are going to be going in. But I want to make sure that they are comfortable with doing that laterally or in a straight line. last closed agility drill we're doing is the X drill. So kind of a cross between the square drill and the Z drill. So they are starting at one end in the back. They are crossing diagonally over to the front cone on the opposite side shuffling, and then backpedaling in an X pattern, and then side shuffling back to the beginning. Okay, so very similar to the technique of the Z drill. So shuffling in a lateral pattern, straight pattern, across, a sprinting, a little bit of everything in this X drill. Our next closed agility drill, we used 3 cones on this one. So the first thing we did was the 5-10-5 drill, which is also called the pro agility drill. So he starts in the middle, and then he will sprint in either direction. If he starts to the left, he'll sprint 5 yards in one direction and then come across, sprint the other direction 10 yards, and then come back to the middle. So for him, since he is a lineman, I wanted to make sure he's comfortable getting down into his 3-point stance and then exploding off the line in one direction. So what he did impress me with is that when he started off in one direction is that he did that crossover. He didn't start with the same leg for which direction he was going. So if he was sprinting to his left, he didn't step with his left leg first. He started with his right leg. He crossed that right leg over, which I was really happy and really impressed with him. Okay. Next, what I had him do was the staggered shuttle. So instead of doing the 5-10-5, he sprinted in one direction 5 yards, and then he sprinted in the opposite direction 3 yards to the next cone. I did move the cone a little bit closer off camera, so that really wasn't very clear there. Okay, so I had my youngest do the 3 cone stack, something that was going to be fairly simple for her to grasp and understand. So I had her start off facing forward, exploding off the line, running to our cones to her right, grabbing one, and then sprinting back, stacking them up. So side shuffle to there, picking up the cone, coming back, stacking it, shuffling, coming back, and then doing that 3 times. Okay, now we are starting our trunk plyometrics. So we started with the ball toss. So I had her get down into a sit-up position. I did hold on to her legs. She doesn't have as much core strength, of course. She's only 6 years old. So I had her sit up. I would toss her the ball. She would grab it, and then she would toss it back to me when she got up. Sit down. Just toss it back. From there, we moved into our seated side toss. So we both face the same direction, sitting down, and we just toss it side to side. Ideally, of course, we would work one direction and then rotate to the other side so that we can work both sides. We were just a little bit pressed for time because we had to go meet some family. So we did side toss, back and forth, side toss, back and forth. Okay. Our next variation was the standing side toss. So he's a little bit more able bodied in catching the ball than his little sister. So that's why I had him doing the standing one. So I did move a little bit further apart so that we can get that distance so that we can actually toss the ball. And again, ideally, the ball would be a little bit more weighted than just a soccer ball. Our next trunk plyometric exercise was the leg toss, which is something that I used to do regularly when I was in athletics in high school. So something I want to incorporate for both of my children, just to make sure that they can get that core strength. So I have her lying down, holding onto my legs, and I'm going to throw her legs forward. So the idea for her is to decelerate the momentum of her legs just before it hits the floor, so that she is working on that lower oblique, the lower oblique, so that she's getting that building up that strength. So we did forward toss, we did side toss. I wanted to make sure that she is trying to keep her body as stable as possible, keeping her legs as straight as possible, not bending her legs in any way so that she's not injuring herself. Something that we're going to need to work on. Okay, and to finish out our lower body plyometrics, we did the single leg forward toss. So just to also balance out and getting those side obliques as well, we are working on just bringing up one leg. Again, I want her to let me push her leg, but also I want her to, what we were doing before, keeping her leg as straight as possible, stopping it just before it hits the floor, and then alternating her leg, and I'll push left and then right, left and then right. Okay, here we have our quickness reaction drills. We started off with the chaos drill and our three variations. The first one is athlete led in the square. So I have them each in 5x5 squares. So the idea for them is to react. So I had my son starting off. He is the leader in this situation, and his sister has to mirror his actions. So I told him to do whichever direction he felt he wanted to do, and then she had to mimic it. So explain to him, if he runs to that first front right cone, then that's the cone that she's gonna run to. And if he backpedals to the back cone, that's what she's gonna do. So I wanted to give them a little bit of encouragement to work on their reactions to each other, which of course they're going to have to do in their respective sports, react to their opponent and try to keep up as much as possible if necessary. Then here for my youngest, we're still doing the chaos drill, but this is led by me, and I'm instructing her which cone to go to. So, of course, at this point, she doesn't know which direction she's going to be going. So, again, testing her agility, her quick reaction to instructions. So, back pedal, side shuffle, sprint to the first cone, whichever way I was telling her to go. That's what she was doing. Okay. So then I went and grabbed two different colored lights. So again, just their quickness reaction drill. So she's staying within the square, and then depending on which side I lifted. So I my left hand I had a green light, then she would move to the left. If my right hand I had the red light, she would move to the right. So it was either side shuffle one direction, side shuffle in one direction. If I kept that light up on my left side, then if she was already on that left cone, then she needed to sprint to the front cone. Side shuffle. Okay, so we're still doing our quickness reaction drills here, but instead of being within a square, we are just in one straight line. So the idea was for them to face each other. This again is the athlete led. So my youngest daughter in the green shirt, she is guiding her sister. So whatever she does, her sister has to react to, but on their own respective lines opposite each other. So my youngest, she's she was super excited to do this, tell her sister what to do. So I needed to make sure that she understood she needs to stay on just one line. She can backpedal, she can side shuffle, she can sprint forward, but they had to stay on their own respective lines and then react to each other's movements. Okay, and here we got back to the coach led, me leading my oldest daughter in the straight line. And again, we were using the lights. So if I had my left hand up, she would side shuffle to the right. If I had my right hand up, she would side shuffle to the right. So left side, left, right. So I had 4 cones set up, and I'm sorry I didn't get it all in the shot. I didn't realize how close I was or how zoomed in I was here. But I would have her shuffle to the right, shuffle to the left. She did pretty good with that one. Okay, and then here I had my son, again, doing a straight line, that quickness reaction drill. So we were using lights here as well. So I wanted to have him sprint, jog, depending on what color light I would show up. So if it was green, then he would do an all-out sprint. If it was red, he would just do a jog. So I had them back and forth between each cone. So whether he was sprinting, jogging, he was reacting pretty quickly to it. He wasn't giving me a full out sprint like I was hoping he would, but again, something that we're going to have to work on. But he was very attentive in keeping up with the different colors. Okay, so here we're doing our upper body plyometrics. We're doing our throws. And again, I don't have a medicine ball. It's probably better that I don't. Actually, just in my house. So I'm using a soccer ball, doing a chest pass. Ideally, I would be using a medicine ball, making it a little bit more weighted, getting my body down into a half squat and doing a chest pass against the wall. Here, I did the two-handed overhand throw straight up in the air. So again, ideally, if I was using a medicine ball, I would want to make sure I get the ball chest level and do a straight toss. It was a little bit lighter, so it was a little bit stronger than I intended to be here, but I would just keep it straight up, doing an overhand toss straight up in the air. And lastly, I did a standing overhead slam. So I'm sure my downstairs neighbors weren't too happy about that. But again, better a soccer ball than a whatever weighted medicine ball. So I would just slam it as hard as I can, get into that squat. Okay, next here I am doing a plank with a ladder for my upper body plyometric. So I'm just doing side to side, 2 hands in each what would be a respective ladder. So that's represented by just the 4 cones. So side to side. And then also from the side, I would do, my next one was in and out. Okay, so starting on the outside, bring both hands in, back out, both hands in, back out. So the idea here, of course, is keeping your core tight so that you can maintain that plank position, whether you're on your hands or whether you're on your feet or up on your knees. You want to make sure that you're keeping that core tight. Okay, and last for the upper body plyometrics for the plank using the ladder, 2 hands within, 2 hands out, 2 hands back in, to the side, and then down. So this one I found a little bit easier than what we were doing during our in session where we're pushing up onto the medicine ball. That was a little bit difficult for me. Our last one, we're doing our resisted sprint exercises. So I had my twins holding each other. So they were trying to resist each other's using just our resistance band. This one they really had fun with. So, but I need to make sure that they're a little bit more serious and they're taking it seriously next time. So they're trying their best to hold on to each other. And I meant to do just 10 yards, but they got through it so quick. So we ended up doing about 20 yards here, back and forth. Our next resistance band exercise was the band chop. So for the resistance bands, we just wrapped them around we stepped on them and then had them over the top of our feet. So what I want him to do here is to essentially do a high knee on one side. Just bring his leg up as high as he can. A little bit difficult for him. The resistance is a little bit more than he was anticipating, and he was hiking up his hip, which I don't want that excessive movement. He's also trying to cross it over. He's having a little bit of trouble here. But again, something that we're going to continue to work on. So ideally, I want him to just keep in a straight line. And once I realized that these were a little bit too difficult for him, I decided to switch it out into a different type of resistance band so that he would be able to get the movement down without injuring himself or falling over, so that he actually understands the movement pattern. So I took those away because those weren't working as well as I needed them to. And then we started using our other resistance bands. So a little bit more give on it, not as much tension on the resistance band. So he was able to get it a little bit better with these. He still has that hip hike. He's bringing all of his weight over to the other leg, which of course he's going to need to do, but he's not just driving the leg up. So we're going to continue to work on that. Okay. Our next exercise here for our resistance band is the wide out. So we tried again with those resistance bands, which I think is a little bit better for this type of exercise. She still had a little bit of difficulty with it. It wasn't as small as I needed it to be. So definitely when we start to incorporate this going forward, I'll find some different types of resistance bands because it's a little bit too wide for their body size. We're working on those those side glutes, those abductor muscles on the hips. So I want him to be in a crouch, a little bit lower in a squat, half squat, and in and out as quick as possible. So I want to work on his speed as well as his agility. So again, as we get further along, or that we get really into this and I start building the program that I want him to incorporate so that he can build up his speed, I'm going to find some different resistance bands that work better for him. So for our last resistance sprint exercises, I'm using the band with the cones. So I'm having them go into just a straight line. So with the resistance band around their hips, I guided them to tap the first cone, come back, tap the second cone, and then come back. So they weren't expecting as much resistance as they got, obviously. So first, second, third cone, they had a little bit, they struggled with a little bit, so I gave them a little bit more slack on it. So youngest to oldest, this is how the direction we went in, but they were each able to understand the concept that we were trying to achieve, which is that resistance sprint as quick as you can to the cone, tap it, come back, tap it, and then come back. So next time we'll do this outside so that they can get a little bit more traction on the ground. Next, we did the forward to the cones, but well, forward from their position, but they went laterally. So they tapped the left cone, came back, tapped the right cone, came back. So they were waiting for my guidance on which direction to go in here. So they would have the band again on their hips, and then I would guide them to tap the left cone or tap the right cone and come back, tap the left cone and come back. so here I am beginning my cool down. I did the cool down with the kids. Unfortunately, I didn't get it recorded. So here I'm just going through a series of static stretches. We want to make sure that we are cooling down the muscles that we just worked out. So I did a few of the upper body plyometric exercises by tossing the ball in the plank on the ladder. I did those exercises as well. So I want to make sure that I am stretching those as well. So of course I started with some standing hamstring stretches, and then I moved into shoulder stretches by crossing my arms across my body. And then I brought my hand to the back of my neck, and I stretched out those triceps side to side. I then moved into standing and seated hamstring stretches. I did also some stretches on where I would lay on my back. I would cross my hip over to the opposite leg so I can stretch out my low back. So for my 9 to 5 job, I'm seated a majority of the time. So I do like to get those back stretches in wherever I can. I did some cat-cow and some downward dog as well, so that I can also incorporate stretching out my lower and mid back.